Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, September 15th. Another smoky day in the area. I hope you've all taken your allergy pills, decongestants, and everything else, and you're staying inside. I just checked my app. We're at 191 right now. That's better than 240 that we were a couple of days ago. But I've been talking to friends of mine on state boards over in the Olympia area. They have bad air too. Same thing in Seattle. It's all over the whole state. Worse, however, in Spokane and Spokane Valley right now. And we did see that WSU is going to be ceasing operations tomorrow again because of the smoke, same thing that they did today, just to make sure everyone stays healthy. So with that, Dee, please take roll for tonight.
Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Chapman.
Present.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen. Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Al Sorensen notified us that he could not be here tonight. Do I hear a motion to excuse?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that again really helps when you raise your hand, although Dee already has it electronically with board docs, so she's got it covered. Well, we have a number of announcements tonight. We're going to do something a little bit differently because obviously this has been a tough week or more for a number of residents in Whitman County, especially with all the fires that we've had in Colfax, Pine City, Malden, over 122 structures that were destroyed in Malden. Much of the story has been covered, but I wanted to have our fire and police chiefs tonight share with the city and share with our council some of the things that Pullman did to be good neighbors in this whole event. We've had our trucks there and still there today. I think I called out a little bit. So Mike Heston, we're going to go to you first to let us know what the fire did in terms of mutual aid to help out.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Good evening, Council. So initially we had the big fire over in Colfax that started in town and it burned a couple of structures, homes, a shop. We sent some structural protection equipment over there in our brush truck, as well as an ambulance to Colfax to give them a hand on that. And at the same time, they had a car wreck out by Dusty, so we sent an ambulance out that way to give them a hand since they were tied up. We had a great crew respond back into town, so we were plenty covered, especially for the holiday weekend on the Labor Day weekend. And then they had another fire out Green Hollow, Manning Road area, so we sent a brush truck out to help them with that. And then over that week, we kept the brush truck on that fire, helping them out because they're really short resources here in Eastern Washington. Everything's so tied up. So there's very low resources to put on those. And then last weekend, there was a fire down in Hawaii Canyon. So that happened late or early Saturday morning, about 1 a.m. And Chief Sergeant Horseman down there is the mobilization coordinator to help with that. And then last weekend, we also sent our brush truck and our structural engine and some bodies up to Malden to help finish that one off because they really hadn't had a chance to get clear around it. It was only at 10% contained at that time. So after them being there through the weekend, most everybody got home on Sunday. And then we had a little bit on yesterday that came home at noon. So we've been helping our residents here in Colfax and also in Whitman County. So that's pretty much what we have going. So
I think I heard that the pumper ladder went up to Pine City to help with the elevator fire too. And then I heard that Tony Nutman, our fire investigator, was over in Colfax helping them a little bit too.
Yeah, the pumper ladder started that way and then got canceled.
I see.
That's correct. Deputy Fire Marshal Nutman went over and helped investigate the fire in Colfax and in the city of Colfax, as well as he went down to the Hawaii Canyon to check that out too. So everybody's been busy helping out in our area, getting everything buttoned up because of the lack of resources. So
And Gary Jenkins, our police chief, is also head of emergency management. And while the Colfax fire was going, they put out a request to see if we could have our evacuations shelter open up. So Gary, would you fill us in with what happened there?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the day of the Colfax fire, I called Bill Tensfeld, the Whitman County Emergency Manager, and asked him what we could do to help. He asked if we could set up an evacuation center. So I got a hold of Kurt Damon. We went to the new senior center at the new City Hall site and opened up a center there and messaged it out for anyone that was evacuated from Colfax. They could come there. We got Red Cross set up at the location. We were open from about 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. that day. And then Red Cross decided they would be better off relocating to Rosalia near the Malden fire so that they could provide direct assistance to the residents there instead of having them drive to Pullman. So we closed that center down at 6. Also during the day, I got a hold of Sheriff Myers and offered any kind of assistance we could for his staff as well. And he did not need any assistance at the time. So those are the things that we did on, that was September 7th.
Thanks so much, Gary. And Ann Parks, who's on our console, is one of those very busy people like many of us. And she's also on United Way board. And one of the things United Way has done is they've stepped up to try and help some of our residents in our county, and especially those in Malden. So Ann, would you tell us how we can give and how we can help United Way?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm going to try to share an update here with you. Just kind of a brief synopsis of what has been happening with your local United Way. Right away, we coordinated with the Colfax Eagles and some other entities, the churches in Rosalia and some other entities to try to get some relief flowing right away in the form of donations, both monetary and goods such as food and clothing. As most of you have heard, that has gone just amazingly well. And in fact, they have plenty of durable goods donations right now. We're planning more toward the future to get some financial help to the victims of the fires. And so the relief fund was created September 7th. And like I said, we wasted no time. Our executive director, Eric Fajarin, immediately got in touch with other agencies in the area to try to coordinate so that we didn't have each agency doing its own thing. We wanted to try to make it be a coordinated effort. We've had an amazing outpouring of support with over 400 individual donations to the relief fund from around the state. The United Way of Whitman County is also partnering with No Lie Brewery up in Spokane to raise funds. The brewery is currently running a $25,000 match for donations raised through them. So, and you can go to their website to see more information on that. And I think we have a link to it as well. We exceeded $100,000 in donations today. Our fund has now over $100,000 in it. And again, we're thinking long-term here, so that's going to be really good. Today was the first community meeting in Malden, and to talk about long-term recovery and how to coordinate that. And it was facilitated by the Red Cross, another agency, of course, that we've been working with. There will be a committee set up, and it will consist of individuals who lost their property or homes, members from the United Way Whitman County, and other impacted individuals to move forward and make a plan and make sure that these resources get out there as needed and we're not holding them, but we want to make sure we have the best way to disperse and to coordinate with the other entities who have resources as well. Ways to donate, you can send it to P.O. Box 426 if you like to mail donations. That's United Way of Whitman County here in Pullman. There's donorbox.org/Whitman-County-Fire-Relief-Fund. And there's a link there. And then text the word in all caps wildfire to 20222. And that actually enables you to give a donation right away over using your phone. And then, of course, you can find United Way of Whitman County on Facebook, and also our website has links and information, whitmanunited.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate that update for people who can help out. Nathan, see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is less about United Way. This is great. Really awesome, 100,000. And thank you, Ann. I did have a question regarding our shelter. I've seen a few homeless individuals. One with a puppy yesterday, and then one with a dog today over by Walmart. And I was wondering if the shelter is also available for these individuals. And if not, Chief, I know both Chief Heston and Chief Jenkins know about the community relief fund set up by Poverty Awareness Task Force, of which I'm a chair. And I wanted to ask if that had been offered, because it does provide a room at least for a night, but I know they have dogs. So I just wanted to open that up and ask both of those questions.
Gary?
I don't know if the people that you're referring to have been offered a place to stay. I would have to do a little bit of research on that to find out. So I can find that out and get back to you.
But our rec center is not open for shelter at this point.
Right. In fact, Red Cross changed their policy on emergency shelters as well, and they do not want to set up shelters in congregate living situation. So essentially, the help that they offer is this: put people up in a hotel as well. So that would have been the help that we would have offered people that came to the shelter. So we, and under the current arrangement with Red Cross, we wouldn't be having people stay overnight at that shelter. It would just be for a coordination center.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I definitely would like to make sure that there's some outreach to these individuals. I didn't get a chance. The one had left. Yeah, we do have that community relief fund, and that would be great, especially during the smoke. All right, it's, yeah, terrible for anyone outside. So,
and we do know that Community Action Center with the Riverview Apartments, some of them already have come online. They will have transitional housing there too. And they have some additional transitional housing on Davis Way. Some of those are being remodeled right now. But if you want to make sure they have a contact with Community Action Center, there's certain relief that's available through Community Action Center too. As some of you know, with those fires, Governor Jay Inslee came to the area, first of all touring Malden and Pine City and others, and then had a private meeting with a number of us at the Cub on the WSU campus to find out about COVID-19 and what was going on here as far as the students and the numbers that we were having. So Troy Henderson, our Whitman County Public Health Director, and Scott Adams was there. Gary Jenkins and I represented the city. And Gary Jenkins actually is the rock star because of the tickets they've been handing out. I think, Gary, you're up to 18 now that tickets have been handed out to people that have ignored the mask order and have ignored the social distancing or no more than 10. And that has the complete support from the governor. He talked about it during his news conference last Tuesday in Olympia. Then he also mentioned it Wednesday morning, and I got a text message from one of the governor's assistants who wanted to talk to both Gary and I that morning, and then fires interrupted. So we also talked to him on Thursday when he was here, but he also did a one-on-one interview with Gary. And then today during a press conference, he also mentioned Gary Jenkins and the tickets, and because he was talking to the university presidents. WSU is ahead of the game because we're on a semester basis. He was really concerned about talking to students and how they can relate to other students so we don't have repeat of what's going on here right now. And I know Nathan and I and several others were on the COVID call on Tuesday. Today, well, that was Monday. They've been all running together a little bit here with all the meetings we've been going to. But we had an update there that Troy says the numbers right now are probably not really reflective of all the tests because they've had a shutdown for smoke. But today, the National Guard went to Beasley Coliseum and did tests there. He is expecting in about 2 weeks or less, the numbers will taper down, and they have stayed pretty much in the college age group of 18 basically to 23. We have had a few in a couple of 50 years of age and 60, but primarily they're all staying basically in the college age group. There will be a message signed by WSU President Kirk Schultz, University of Idaho President Scott Green, Bill Lambert, the mayor of Moscow, and myself, that will go out talking about we are one community and giving the message that we're protecting both communities, we're protecting both universities, and to indicate how important it is to mask up and to distance. And also it shows our strong support for law enforcement in basically enforcing the rules that we have. So I know one release came out today from the from Washington State University. There will be in news and also be with social media as well. Other things that are going on here today, we had Kevin Gardis and our Public Works Director, along with Wayne Thompson from Pullman Transit, myself and Tony Bean from the airport, all meeting with the Washington State Transportation Commission. That was supposed to be in Pullman, but because of COVID and other things, we had a Zoom meeting today. But we all had a chance to talk about Pullman, some of the things that are going on in transportation and how that impacts all of us. And it was a really, really positive meeting. And some of you may know this, but our excellent city administrator, Adam Lincoln, announced that he has accepted another position in the city of Pasco. And he's done a lot for this community, as you well know, and a lot of major accomplishments, a number of areas. He'll be with us until the middle of October. And there's still a couple of other messages, and we say it every week, is the census report. And that is we need to get the numbers up. Right now, Whitman County is at 67%. Pullman is at 59%. I was on a state call just last week, and Washington, for response rate, is number 2 in the nation with over 70% response for a census. It's about 72% on the west side. So we really need to get our act together here on the east side. And also Washington Idaho Symphony got creative to raise funds. So they're doing a first ever virtual silent auction fundraiser. And you can just check their website for details on that. And the last one is celebrate bicycling with Palouse Bike Week through Saturday, September 19th. We hope that the air cleans before then. You can go to pullmanchamber.com for Bike Week, and then you can pedal the Palouse. So those are the announcements tonight. We have a presentation tonight on the Whitcomb cost allocation model.
Glenn, I have a quick,
yes.
I have
Okay.
a quick comment. Yeah. Actually, 3 quick comments. One, it's important to remember with the census, and I appreciate you saying that. There was someone who came to my door asking about the rentals in the area, and she was actually from the west side because there weren't enough people able to man those positions here locally. The second thing is, I think, I know I speak for myself, and all the council members can speak for themselves as well. Adam Lincoln has been transformational in the city. It is just amazing. And, he definitely will be very missed. I think the third thing is, and this is one for the citizens as well as the council, I was very appreciative that not only Kirk, but also Glenn and Chief Jenkins, the governor and his staff were flexible enough that I stopped in to the meeting. And it's important for us as the council to be able to also represent our voters and those people that we represent as public servants. So I appreciate that, Glenn. Both Glenn and Chief Jenkins did an amazing job, and the governor was very interested and asked a lot of great questions. So we're in solidarity. I know, with him, and I'm sure the council members as well. Thank you.
So Dan?
I just want to make a comment on, thanking Adam for his service to the city. I know that, we'll still have some time with him yet, but I really, when I think back on when I joined this council and kind of that transition into becoming a council member and all of the kind of large kind of learning curve that comes with, I think my meetings with Adam and my discussions with him were instrumental in kind of preparing me for this role, and I really appreciate that. And I don't know what it would have been like without you.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna just, Mayor, if you don't mind, I'm gonna throw the same thing. And Adam, as a West Wing guy, what's next? Right there, you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jim? Now, I was just trying to, because I know we have a long meeting tonight, just trying to move along, and Wendy's there with Whitcomb. And believe me, Wendy, I was listening, as I always do, with the activity going on in Colfax and Pine City and Malden, listening to Whitcomb operators doing just a fantastic job handling that emergency, concentrating strictly as Colfax was dealing with things, and the same thing with helping out Malden. You guys were just awesome. And
Thank
so
you.
I wanted to start that way, Wendy, because I know you're going to give us, and also congratulate you on being our new executive director of Whitcomb. So
Thank you. It's been a busy couple months.
and then it says, okay, now fix the budget. Okay, so
Yeah, that's why Roger and Lisa are here with me today.
we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, for those of you who don't know me, which is probably most of you, I'm Wendy Barrett, as promoted to the executive director July 1st. I started at Whitcomb 20 years ago as a dispatcher and just worked my way up. So unfortunately, I haven't spent a lot of time, learning administrative things. I spent a lot of time dispatching. So big learning curve for me, but I've got some great help with Lisa and Roger and some of the other agency heads. And so we knew, Roger and Lisa, they started, working on the user fee model before my promotion. So I'm just coming in at the tail end, but, there was a desire from the board to have a consistent funding model based on the increasing costs. And, Whitcomb is using their reserves because the income has not gone up, but Whitcomb is not bankrupt. So we've leveraged some of those open positions that we've had with the dispatch positions and reserve funds for the past 3 years to make it work. But we need to come up with a long-term plan that will work for Whitcomb and all of our agencies. You should have a spreadsheet, I believe, was given to all the city council. And the numbers on the spreadsheet in front of you is the worst case scenario. We looked at several different options. Model based on percentages is what you have in front of you. An even split amongst the agencies. They looked at the model based on population and a model based on CAD calls or dispatch calls. We ended up going with the percentage model that you have in front of you. And the reason was because there was desire to take into the account the various in-kind services that a lot of our agencies provide, such as HR, payroll, capital improvement contributions, and the infrastructure support that we get. And this model implements half of the increases the first year and the second half of the increases the second year. But there's two things to consider. And the Nez Perce tribe contract that we have expires June 2021. And so currently $100,000 is factored in as credits for 2021. They're at the top of the page. And then in 2022, we'll have to make up $100,000 if the Nez Perce tribe contract isn't renewed. And we plan to start negotiations with the tribe at the first of 2021. We did meet with and have plans to continue meeting with the CFOs from all of our partner agencies to do budget formulations each year, because those CFOs have a lot more of a thorough understanding of budgeting, cost of living increases, and any other factors that affect the budget. And we realize we can't expect increases in our budget if municipalities can't absorb increases in their budget. And we know everybody's in a pretty tough spot right now. The numbers for 2021 are not concrete. There's many factors that will influence numbers in the coming years, such as grant money, tribal money, if we continue with that contract, budget increases, salary increases. It also reflects a projected diminishing overtime costs. We're hoping our staffing will continue to go up rather than down. We're working really hard to make that happen. And the budget also includes for 2021 a 6% dispatch salary increase, and in 2022 a 4% dispatch salary increase. And that was negotiated in the contract negotiations between the Guild and Whitcomb. So that's already set. But that's all I have. What about questions?
And both Mike Heston and Gary Jenkins sit on the Whitcomb board, and Mike Urban also attends those meetings as well. And you might explain about the 6%. I know you said it was negotiated. Were they far behind in terms of cost of living, had not had raises over the past? Is that why it was 6% when generally
Yeah.
cost of living's about?
Yes. Yeah. And they're still, even with 6% this year and 4% next year, they're still behind.
Gary or Mike, any comments?
No, other than Chief Heston and Mike Urban and I did put together a memo that we did send to council with our assessment of it and recommendation.
And there was one that just came off this afternoon. Nathan?
Yeah, I'd like to also have Mike Urban's opinion. I know you sent out a joint memo, but Mike, could you level in on this, or should we just stick to the memo?
The memo and the spreadsheets are very good items to look at. We're going to be talking about this a lot during our budget as well, because it is a significant increase. As Wendy said, they're dipping into their reserves to, continue operations. And I can tell you for sure at this point in the budget, we will be using reserves to balance our budget as well for the next 2 years. So they're not experiencing anything that we're not. We need to make sure we feel comfortable absorbing this. And when I meet with the CFOs, there's similar concerns through all the jurisdictions that it's a pretty hard hit all at once to make up for a long time of not raising fees. So we're going to continue meeting on this, and I'll certainly brief council in depth on this during the budget time. And our reps to the board, our voting members, are Chief Heston and Chief Jenkins. So they have some say on this price or this model as well before it gets implemented.
Great, thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Eileen, you're next.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think the more data-driven approach it was well explained in the memo. So I would like to see us, I realize that sounds like expensive right now, but I would like to see a more data-driven approach as is recommended here in this memo. And I'm curious as to why this has not been addressed in 10 years.
I'm sorry. What was the last part of what you just said?
Why was nothing done about this? Or maybe there was, but the impression that I'm left with is that this sort of languished for 10 years and didn't grab that it deserved.
Well, that would be a board question. So can Chief Heston or Chief Jenkins expand on that at all?
See, Wendy's learning really fast when an executive director does. And we've got to give some credit to Roger back there too.
Yes.
getting one of his duties, and thank you for being a Moscow police officer who's been helping out with WITCON, it was trying to get the numbers right so we could actually get how we can actually support WITCON. It's a very vital service for the whole county and area, and Moscow as well, and as we heard, Nez Perce County and some others. So they've been working on that budget, and yes, we're going to have to take some hard looks at it and figure out what to do. And I sort of agree with you, Eileen, in terms of how many minutes do they spend on a particular call, and how many follow-ups, and all the things that was mentioned in that memo. Gary or Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, ultimately it falls to the board. So, it's a board responsibility, and it ultimately falls to us. Where there were some challenges previously with some of the WICOM director, and of course, then we had another director that was in for a very short time before Wendy stepped in. So there was some issues going on during transition. But I mean, I can't say it any more than it ultimately just falls to the board. And I guess we were not paying close enough attention with the director two directors ago of what was going on with the finances. And so we'll be working to correct that.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, Mayor, it's been the direction of the board to work on a financial plan for the last couple of directors. So it just never transpired, to be honest. So we're just going to come to a point where we really, really need to work on this. So, and when Roger stepped in recently, that got the ball rolling. So we really appreciate that. So we're just trying to see how this is going to fit in with 2020 COVID issues that really came in a bad timing is bad with all this.
Dan.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for all the work and putting these memos together and kind of explaining it in such a succinct fashion, because this is a very complicated kind of situation that we're dealing with multiple agencies. And I think that just, seeing the complexity of that just highlights the need to kind of, make sure that communication about, what you're talking about with meeting with the CFOs, and that communication is a two-way street with all the agencies, because we need to try to make sure that we are maintaining the agency partners that we have to be able to share this resource and be able to maintain it. Because I'm just concerned that if we have some of our partner agencies not able to shoulder this because of their budget situations, that's going to put increased pressure on the remaining agencies. So I think it's really critical to try to maintain the multi-agency support that we currently have going forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyone else with a comment or question? Okay. Seeing none, then we thank you, Wendy, for this presentation. Roger, again, thank you for all the hard work you've done on this and getting us right-sided, so to speak.
We're trying. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next comes our consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. Do I hear a motion to read the consent agenda by title only?
So moved. Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, Laura McAloon, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 1, 2020, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 100851 through 100885, totaling $2,006,389.06. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 100886 through 100960, totaling $268,858.03, and resolution number R-61-20, a resolution setting a date for a public hearing to consider the 6-year transit development plan for the 2020 through 2025 and 2019 transit annual report for the city of Pullman.
Any item the council would like out for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 4. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now start our regular agenda. Item number 1 is a resolution approving a 6-year capital improvement program for the city. And Mike Urban's going to start it off because I think they're going to take both 1 and 2, which is number 2 is dealing with the 6-year transportation improvement program together, and then we'll vote separately. So Mike Urban, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, you're correct. These two items are best presented together, but absolutely they need separate resolutions. And public hearings are involved with both of these. So Laura, do we need to do the appearance of fairness now, or do we do that after the presentation?
The appearance of fairness questions wouldn't apply to either of these public hearings, so it's not required.
That'll come up later for the other matter that we're dealing with on Ritchie Street.
Correct. That's for item 4.
Perfect.
Under the regular agenda.
Then let's dig in. You guys have a lot of information on this. So yeah, I'm just going to lead off. Working tonight with Deputy Public Works Director Clayton Forsman and Public Works Director Kevin Gardis. So I'll do my first little bit and then hand the baton off to Clayton to discuss the public works projects in CIP. And then he will hand off to Kevin to discuss really the TIP designated items. So normally the planning director will be making this presentation, but the city has been in transition with the retirement of Pete Dickinson and our new planning director, RJ Lott, being here for just a couple weeks. So I'll be playing the part tonight of Pete/RJ. So really looking at this, starting with my memo that's part of the packet dated 7/29. I do want to acknowledge there was a change in the CIP process. I touched on that in my memo, and the correspondence from the mayor on this topic has been included in the packet as well. So when this process began for the department heads last spring, not knowing what the ramifications of COVID-19 pandemic, department heads were really asked to take a critical look at their 2021 capital requests and schedule out into 22 any items or beyond, unless it was emergent, critical, waiting would cause harm to either the community, any city assets or infrastructure, or it would lead to costly repairs in the near term. So by doing so, staff had been looking out in the future years for the plan and not just fixating on the requests for the coming years. As you could probably see by looking at the plan, you're seeing a lot more stuff in future years in all the departments. And that's kind of the goal of this, is to really look at it as a 6-year plan where items gradually move forward from year 3 to year 2 to year 1 to get funded, so we have a better idea of what's going on. But still doing this process every year so we're nimble enough to add new projects as they come up and become necessary. So in the second section of the memo, I touched on the funding sources for the capital projects, and the most volatile of which is the sales tax collection that funds all the general fund items. So currently the CIP reserve in the general fund stands at $1,236,609.20. And this is taking into account all the likely expenditures between now and the end of 2020 that were already approved, and as well as if the council approves the 2 items for 2021. So that's really kind of what we expect the end of it to be in 2021. I'm just trying to show that there's reserves there to move forward. Again, under this proposal, the general fund, there's only a couple items totaling $79,500 that are being recommended to you. These amounts does maintain the $350,000 per year requirement to meet City Ordinance 692.020 for the 2021 expenditures. But looking into these 2021 items, I just want to kind of hit the highlights. I'm going to take the general fund, Metro Parks, and the IT items, and then I'll turn it over to Clayton for the rest of the CIP part, and then Kevin certainly has the TIP. So the first item we want to look at is under Parks and Facilities. This is a recurring item. It's 88 projects throughout the city. The proposal is $22,500, which is up 12.5% over the previous year's recommendation. And that increases, we're just going to try to attempt to do more of these 88 projects around town, especially with the focus going on downtown. And that's not saying all this money is going to be spent down there, but we wanted to add a little bit more so we can do some things there. The other general fund item is housed in the library functional area, and that's due to funding coming through the Friends of the Neal Public Library, as well as the fact that the River Nook that's being proposed is going to be done on library property. So the $57,000 for this item is to fund the Sarah M. Moore Memorial River Nook. These dollars were raised privately to be passed through for this project, honoring her memory. So it'll be a donation in and a donation out. Metro Parks, there's 3 projects, 2 of which were really kind of tied to New City Hall, and they were kind of the last things cut when we got the bids to do the construction. So we were hoping to come back in a future year in 2021 and do a couple of these items. So the first of these is $15,221 to replace and upgrade the acoustical wall panels in the rec center. These are the panels that surround the gym area. And by upgrading them, and it would increase the sound dampening from the noise coming from the gym into the peripheries, which is the classroom, the senior center, and all the other common areas. The next item is $35,574 to repaint the exterior of the recreation building. The exterior, 20-plus-year-old building, it's faded, discolored, and with all the new construction, we were cutting in doors and windows. So a fresh coat of paint would help protect the structure and bring a uniform look to the facility. And the third item that we're looking at replacing is the carpet around the walking track and how it goes out into the main floor to the front door. So when the construction of the rec center commenced, the contractor covered the carpet in order to preserve it for future use. But if you remember during the construction walkthrough, that carpet was already getting pretty beat up, and it's gotten, the longevity of it is not in really great shape. There's not much of a padding in it for walking. So $43,495 is proposed to replace that with a durable rubberized surface, adding the padding for the walking track and provide easier to clean and disinfect, especially in the days of COVID here. So that kind of touches on the 3 projects in Metro Parks, and those are funded through property tax through the Metro Parks, which we receive almost $580,000 on. So again, these projects were deemed as critical and up for consideration for council. So the IT department, there's 2 projects in there. The first one is one you see every year. It's a $50,000 expenditure for ongoing projects. It's just set aside dollars for unanticipated equipment replacements. That's typical in the IT world. Sometimes you know when something's going towards the end of its useful life, like this next item, and sometimes things simply just break. So we want to keep a little bit set aside for that for some of those higher priced things. But speaking of items that are ending its useful life, there's a $130,000 upgrade proposed for our virtual infrastructure. Because as the city grows, the need for storage and memory on our server technology increases. And based on the purchase date and lifespan of this equipment, the current items are right there, and we're starting to see increased costs to our service contracts to support them. So this kind of falls within the parameters of the law of diminishing returns. We're paying more, we're running out of space. Are these dollars better spent for purchasing new equipment? Bad news is, yeah, it's kind of a hit, but as we continue moving through to more cloud-based storage, this type of capital outlay will slowly start to go away. And we'll see an increase in our infrastructure costs for licensing to do the cloud-based, but maintaining this type of on-site is going away. So hopefully by the next time we come back around, it'll be a little different discussion on that. So I'm gonna stay on so we can get through the rest of the presentation for you, and I'll be able to take some questions as we go. But Clayton Forsman is our Deputy Public Works Director, and he can touch on some of the highlight projects in those departments.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, Mayor Johnson and City Council. It's a little bit different process this year, so I'm just going to take a few minutes and touch on some of the utility fund projects that are in the proposal before you tonight for the 2021 to 2026 CIP. And as Mike mentioned, I'll transition over to Kevin here when I'm finished up. So then we'll take any questions you guys might have at the end. So I'd like to start with utility fund, the water budget of the utility fund. The first project I'd like to talk about is Well 7 and Well 4 flood mitigation. And this is a new project this year. This project is at Well 7 and Well 4, which is located at the intersection of Grand Avenue and Ritchie Street. At this area, when we have flooding, there's storm drainage from this site that outfalls to Missouri Flat Creek. And our process to control flooding at the well site is to close some valves, add a pump. Takes M&O manpower to do that. And then a secondary measure that we incorporated in April of 2019 when that area flooded was some sandbagging on the doors. We were successful in 2019 with protecting those wellheads, but this project would construct flood walls around the site. And the idea is, as we learned in 2019, that flood came on kind of out of nowhere. And so dedicating resources and staff to monitor that site, we're trying to eliminate that and mitigate flooding with constructing some flood walls. So that's what that project's all about. We're hoping if this is accepted and if the CIP is adopted, that we could do this project next year. Another project in the water budget of the utility fund that's also new this year is the project called Generator Quick Connect project for booster stations. And this is a project brought forward from Art and his staff out at M&O. This project would retrofit our booster pump stations with quick connects so that our operations staff can go out during a power outage and hook a mobile generator up. Currently, if there's an outage, we have a mobile generator that we bring out, and then we have to get an electrician to come out and hardwire it in. So that's the idea behind that project. The next project is also in the water budget of the utility fund. And it is a project you've seen before. It's been in previous CIP, and it's water extension to the airport. So this project would take city water out to the airport site. The starting point would be at the intersection of Terraview and North Fairway. And we'd run east out Terraview and turn and go up airport, and we'd end near the site of the new terminal for this project. The thinking is, getting our reliable water out there ahead of the new terminal project. Another project also in water it's titled P5 Storage, New Northeast High Storage Tank. You guys have heard about that before. It's to construct a new water tank on Skyline Drive. And that's to increase pressure and address a storage deficiency we have in that pressure zone. So we recently entered into an MOU last year with a developer, a student housing developer that owns property next to the existing tank site. And so we've through that MOU, we just recently signed papers and closed on property. So we've acquired the property now, and the next steps will be to start design work, which we hope to do in 2021, and then construction in 2022. I'm going to move on and shift gears here on you. So let's look at the sewer budget of the utility fund. And the first project is also a carryover project. It's Canyon View Drive to Darrow Street Path. So it's been in previous CIPs. This project would construct a maintenance path. It would be paved from Darrow Street to Canyon View. It would allow us access to our sanitary sewer manholes in the area, and it would also serve as pedestrian access for people living up in that development and trying to get down to places such as Jefferson Elementary. So that project is funded, it's kind of a split fund. So half of it is proposed to be funded from the sewer budget of the utility fund, and the other would be from the 2018 Parks and Rec bond. Another project in the sewer budget of the utility fund is the new decant facility. We were successful last fall in obtaining funds from DOE to fund 75% of that project. This project is to replace the decant facility that we had previously, but was lost when we constructed the new fuel island. So the site is on the east side of Guy Street, across from the M&O facility. And our proposal is to do some grading over there. That area is designated as an area where M&O will grow into. So we'll be looking at constructing a level pad out there next year. And a portion of that level pad will be used for the decant facility the following year. So we will be doing design work next year on the decant facility and construction in 2022. And we use the decant facility to dewater waste from the Vector truck, which collects material from both sanitary sewer pipelines and storm drains. Moving on, sewage treatment budget of the utility fund. A couple projects to highlight. The first project is replace dry well jib cranes. This is a new project. Of course, it's at our wastewater treatment facility. It's located at the headworks of the inflow pump station. And in that facility, we have a dry well where the pumps are located. And in order to pull the pumps and rebuild them and do maintenance, there are some cranes mounted on the walls. And a recent OSHA inspection revealed that those are in need of replacement. So that's what that project's all about. Another sewage treatment project is replace the DAF. You've seen this in previous CIPs. It's a carryover. This project was identified in our 2016 facility plan, and it's to replace our DAF with 2 rotary drum thickeners. Currently, we're at the 95% design mark. We're hoping to advertise that project later this fall, and construction would start next year. In closing, I'll talk about just a few projects from the Stormwater Fund. First project is Tractor Town Square flood mitigation. So this project, if you're familiar with the Tractor Town Square building, it's the building on Grand Avenue. It's across from the laundromat, just north of our Well 4 and Well 7 site. That site sits vertically, it sits lower than Grand Avenue. And so what we're looking at doing here is, again, things that we've learned from the flood in 2019. The way that site is configured, the driveway on the north end is a point where water from that would perhaps be running down the road from a flood can get, it can kind of get out of the road and go down and flood their site. So what we're doing is looking at retrofitting the driveway there to add some more vertical separation. It wouldn't eliminate flooding, but it would certainly mitigate it. And it's about the best we can do at this point. We've got pretty far along on the design and pending CIP approval. we would do that next year. And the last project, also in the Stormwater Fund that I would like to talk about is Park Street flood improvements. This project you've seen before. It's a carryover. And this project would construct a flood wall on Park Street from State Street west to where the road starts to climb again. It's a project that's been identified before in our comprehensive flood hazard management plan. And we actually submitted a FEMA grant for this a few years back. FEMA, with their workload and whatnot, we haven't heard yet on that grant. We have been in communication with them though, and we're hopeful we'll get funded for that, and that's why it's in here. If we get funded, we'll go ahead and construct it. And with that, those are kind of the highlights I wanted to talk about. I'll transfer this over to Kevin at this point, and then we could take questions. I see Ann's hand there, but we could do that now or later, however you want to handle that.
So if it's all right, we'll just go on to Kevin, and then we'll take all the questions if that's good. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The city's 6-year transportation improvement program is developed annually along with the city's capital improvement program. It includes proposed transit division purchases and transportation projects on city arterials planned to be constructed within the next 6-year period. TIP projects are a subset of CIP. In other words, there are no projects in the TIP that are not already included in the CIP. Many of these projects are funded by grants. And for instance, on the list, and all of the projects that are listed at over $100,000 have grants associated with them. So the smaller dollar projects are local, but anything over $100,000 has a grant associated with it. Once these projects are on the city's approved TIP, these projects are then also added to the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP for short, which is a requirement for some of the grant funding sources. And just like Clayton and Mike before me, I'll go ahead and run through a few selected projects, and then we can open it up to any questions on other projects or any other questions you have. So the first project I'll talk about is the fixed route coach replacement in transit. That's a project you've heard about in the past, approved applying for a grant for 2 new electric buses, and we've actually, council's approved ordering the 2 buses, and they're due in next year. We currently have a project to upgrade the transit facility bus barn to charge those electric buses. So everything's kind of falling into place there. And that's funded with an 80-20 grant. So we're getting approximately 1.4 million of the 1.746 total cost will be from a grant. The second project, I'll switch down to arterial streets, is the Terraview Roundabout. Again, this is a project that was discussed with council earlier this year. Grant application has been submitted to TIB in August, and we'll find out probably in November whether we were successful. If we were, we plan to do the design work in 2021 and construct the project in 2022. We have $60,000 earmarked in 2021 and $705,000 in 2022. And assuming we have a successful TIB grant, the grant would cover 85% of the costs. Terraview resurfacing is another project on Terraview. This is also a TIB grant that council approved submitting earlier this year. It got submitted in August as well. And if it's successful, design and construction will be done next year. This is a pretty simple project to design. It's basically just a grind and inlay. So assuming we have a successful grant, that's a $665,000 project next year with an 85% grant. Airport road improvements. I wanted to mention this because this is, even though this project isn't necessarily going to get constructed for a few years, it could be an important project to help out with the airport development and economic changes out there associated with the airport. So essentially what this project is the county has already applied for funding for a project on their portion of Airport Road. So Airport Road is about half in the county's jurisdiction and about half in the city of Pullman's jurisdiction. So they've applied for a grant to upgrade their section. And Mark Story, the Whitman County Public Works Director, contacted us and asked if we'd be interested in potentially discussing a joint project, with the benefit to the city being we could use the county's funding as match money if we wanted to apply for a larger federal grant to approve all of Airport Road, not just the county portion. And so we've talked for a number of years about improving Airport Road alongside the airport. We've run sewer out there. That project is finishing up. The airport's doing a lot of moving. The terminal's going to be under design here fairly shortly, if it isn't already. And so we want to look at improving Airport Road in a multimodal fashion. So what we've done is budgeted some money for 2021 to help develop the conceptual design for what the city section of Airport Road would look like. And it's likely that it would look different than the county section. So in order to be able to come up with a good cost estimate and get ready for a grant application in a couple of years, we really need to flesh out the concept of what it would look like. So we have $50,000 allocated to do that starting next year. And then the major project would go to construction probably in 2024, maybe 2025, depending on timing. So those are the projects that I wanted to highlight for you tonight. Council passed a resolution earlier this month to set the date to hold a public hearing on the TIP as today's date, September 15th. The Planning Commission considered the TIP at their meeting of August 19th, 2020, and found it consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The general action requested of the council tonight is to hold a public hearing. If council is ready to approve the TIP tonight, a resolution is included in your packets for adoption. The same goes with CIP. If council wants more time to deliberate and ask questions, we can always bring it back at a subsequent meeting with your questions answered. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the mayor and council to ask questions, and then the public hearing would come, I guess, after that time.
Okay, questions of Kevin or Mike or Clayton on what's been presented so far? And we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Nathan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for Clayton. I just had a quick question for clarification. Under your list, there's something called car wash removal. I'm assuming that has to do with our new car wash in town, and no, it doesn't. Can you explain what that's for then, please?
Sure. That's referencing the car wash at the corner of Grand and Stadium Way.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a hydraulic bottleneck.
Yes.
So it's kind of a placeholder project. If that property owner is willing to work with us to remove the structure over the creek to open that channel back up, that's what that project would entail. So it has to do with flooding and mitigating flooding by removing the car wash.
Understood. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, Nathan. Then we'll go to Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions, and so I'm going to give them to both of you, but we'll begin with Clayton because that was Ann's question. Councilmember Park's question is a good segue. I know that area is being used as parking for the marijuana shop that's there. And so is it being discussed not only with the building owner, but also with the business that is currently there? And then I have another question that will go to Kevin, but Clayton, I want you to answer this first.
Sure, you betcha. After the flood in 2019, Kevin actually reached out to the owners of that business, and some work was actually done. The above ground part of the structure of the car wash was removed. I think that, we're willing. It takes them to want to do it as well. So we keep communication channels open. And like I said, that's why we have it in CIP, is that hopefully that opportunity will arise.
Okay, real quick follow-up on that one. Will it weaken the structure that's there by removing that?
I can answer this one, Clayton, if you don't mind. I've looked at it fairly closely. I think there's a way to remove it, and for the business where the pot shop is to stay intact. It's going to take a little bit of work. In my previous conversations with the folks that run the store, and also through them, the building owner, it sounded like they may have some plans to develop that property. And if we could work with them on how they develop that site to be able to pull that hydraulic bottleneck out and still allow them the functionality they need to have a store, then it could be a win-win for them and for the city. And so that's sort of where I left it with them. And we made a lot of progress on it last year, and then we kind of ran out of time. So we've got it in the budget. I hope to be able to pick it back up and make some progress on that. But I guess that's my answer on that question.
Good. Well, we just don't want it falling into the river. The other question with you, Kevin, is so with there being different designs between the county and the city along that airport road, I like the idea of multimodal traffic. Is there going to be, are we working collaboratively with the county to have a seamless type of transition? I don't want to run into a situation where we have here in the city some streets have walkways and then they suddenly stop. So I wouldn't want that.
Yeah, understood. Yes, we will be. The short answer is yes, we'll be coordinating with the county. We'll make sure that whatever transitions are there, that we accommodate those. So one thing the county will probably look at is a 3-lane section with center turn lane in places with a wide shoulder. And so, bicyclists could ride on a wide shoulder on a county road. Now in the city portion, which is the other half of Airport Road, we may want to have a grade separated, multimodal path like you're more used to seeing on Terraview Drive, for instance, right adjacent to this. So I guess that's what I'm saying, that might look a little different. Those are the types of things that might look different. But it would be an opportunity for a bike to continue on, even if it's not exactly the same infrastructure.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I think the last thing, and I just wanted to express this, Glenn, I appreciate you putting in the email, and I've heard some concerns from individuals regarding this new setup for CIP, but I appreciate the email, Glenn, you added, and I hope our citizens can look at that and understand the forward thinking and the logic in it. So.
And again, it was a team effort putting that all together. So we appreciate that. Dan, you're next.
I'll start with a kind of a follow-up to Nathan's questions about the airport road. I know we currently have some construction going along there with the sewer project. With that project, and kind of if we're looking at the water line project out there, are we kind of keeping with forward thinking? Are we kind of leaving some of the infrastructure in place there with those projects to potentially put in a path out to the airport with those current projects? I know driving by there's kind of some gravel laid down. There's some ditch work being laid, but there's some sections that almost look like a gravel path being left there on top of some of those where it's being dug up. Is that something that's currently going on?
Yeah, Clayton, I'll take this one if you're okay with it. We talked quite a bit during design of the sewer project, kind of along the same lines that you just brought up, whether we could put the path in now. But we felt like we didn't have enough information to construct an asphalt path at this time. Right. but we do need, because we weren't quite sure where it would sit and if it would be at the right elevation, with the final improvements. Most likely it wouldn't be. But we wanted maintenance access to the manholes that are along that line where the sewer is running. So that's what the gravel's for. We're hopeful that we can use that gravel for subgrade for a path at some point. But that remains to be seen when we get into the conceptual design and work everything out. As far as the utilities go, and your comment about forward thinking, we've worked pretty closely with the airport's consultants, Mead and Hunt, to make sure that we've laid out the utilities in airport road so that everybody has enough room and there's enough spacing so nobody's getting crowded out or pinched out. So.
Yeah, I think that's important just to keep in mind on those types of long-term projects that, there's some cost savings by doing the current projects a certain way and leaving that room available for future projects too. So I appreciate that. I have a question or maybe a comment about kind of how we receive the information on some of these, like the way the charts are laid out. There's oftentimes things that are pulling from 2 or 3 separate funds. And I'm wondering if we could incorporate into those charts kind of like a notation, maybe in parentheses or brackets next to the dollar amount of what the total project cost is. Because sometimes when you see something coming from one fund and then the other corresponding part is 3 pages later, it's just hard to kind of keep that in mind. You have to keep flipping back and forth between pages. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Actually, this did come up from Planning Commission as well. We had just adopted the format that we'd been using in the past, and now that we've heard it from one place, let alone multiple, these are things that we're taking notes on for next year. So that's something we're looking forward to changing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Eileen, you're next.
You're muted, Eileen.
Yes, gentlemen, what if we don't get the grant for the Terraview roundabout?
We don't do the project.
Thank you.
Okay, others? Any other council comments, suggestions? Okay, and if there are no more questions, we'll take item number 1, which is a resolution. And do I hear a motion on this item?
Mayor?
Yeah.
Mayor, I believe you needed to call for the public hearing.
That's correct. Thank you.
And hold that first.
Probably, since we're doing this Zoom, Rob, have you heard anybody that wanted to make public comment on the CIP? So we open it up for public that if they have notified us with this process.
And you can make a call for anyone that is on the public call-in line right now, whether they would like to provide any public, any comment on the public hearing.
Okay, is there anyone on the public line? I know one person's supposed to be there for the CARES comment. Anyone for the CIP?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll close the public hearing. At this time, yes, Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the issue that Councilmember McCall picked up on, and this is very important too. There's a lot of grants out there for these types of projects, and some of the grant requirements do require them to be existing in your CIP. So if some of these projects don't exist, they don't have to be 2021 projects. We could put them out into year 6. But as long as we have some of these projects listed, we may not do them. But if a grant becomes available, it becomes a greater chance of us getting that grant if we do include it in the CIP project. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, adapting this instead of just a really, okay, what are we doing next year, to a more forward-thinking document.
Now, is there any motion on item number 1?
Move to adopt resolution R-62-20.
Second.
I hear a second from Pat Wright. Okay. And Laura, would you read the resolution?
Sorry, my screen went black.
If you don't have it, I'll read it if that's okay with you. It's resolution R6220,
Thank
a
you.
resolution approving a 6-year capital improvement program for the city of Pullman for calendar years 2021 through 2026. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. We now move to the next item. It's number 2. It's a public hearing. So we've had a presentation, comments, any additional questions on the 6-year transportation improvement program? Seeing none, we'll open it up for public testimony if there's any. And again, we'll check with our IT people to see if anyone's on the line for just, again, this is only for the transportation improvement program for the city of Pullman.
Mayor, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I realize the whatever is required by law answer, but what exactly did we do to notify the public of the public hearing? I'm just curious because it seems like there's a lot of opinions on these kind of things, but I don't see anybody here tonight, and I'm just curious what were the steps that we took to publicize a public hearing.
I believe it.
He has some answers.
Who's going to D? You'll take it, okay?
Yes, it was posted on the city website. It was posted in board docs, and it was pushed out on social media.
And it was in the planning commission, and they mentioned at that time when the city council would take it up too for public hearing.
And I believe it was advertised in the local papers too, Dee?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Okay. Eileen, did you have an additional comment?
No, we're good.
Okay. So it was publicized.
Yes, sir, it was.
Yeah. Okay, there's no more questions on that. And I heard that there was no one on the public call-in. Then do I hear a motion on item number 2?
Move to adopt.
Okay.
Second.
I hear a second from Ann Parks. Laura, would you read that if you can see it on your screen? If not, I'll read it.
No, I have unfrozen my screen. Resolution number R-63-20, a resolution approving a 6-year transportation improvement program for the city of Pullman for calendar years 2021 through 2026.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That we now move to item number 3. And this is an ordinance dealing with health and sanitation. And it's a long title, but we're going to go to Laura McAloon, our city attorney, on this one. And
Thank
we may
you.
hear from Gary Jenkins as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. That actually is not too long of a title for amending city code. Sometimes we have years and years of prior ordinances being amended. This one's not so bad. But what this does, it's ordinance number 20-6, and it's based on feedback from the city council. Staff have prepared this draft ordinance that provides updates to our existing public nuisance code, which is found in chapter 5.01 of the Pullman City Code, and to the nuisance party code, which is found in chapter 5.05 of the city code. What we are proposing is a strengthened definition of a public nuisance to specifically call out the violation of public health orders and proclamations that are issued during a public health emergency, such as we have experienced with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The current code provides that it's a general language about any other creating a situation that creates any other public health risk for the public. And while we believe that that covers violation of the governor's proclamations and any public health officer proclamations, we do want to recommend that we beefing up our city code by adding specific language calling out violation of a public health order or a proclamation issued by the governor of Washington state or any state, federal, or local public health official. That doesn't mean that we would have to enforce every proclamation, but should local officials determine that the local public health requires enforcement using this language, just simply provides us with additional strength in the city code. We've also retained the penalty classification for this type of a violation as a Class 2 violation. Previously, though, it said that the minimum mandatory penalty was $150, which at the time that the nuisance party code was adopted was the penalty for a Class 2 infraction. So what we are recommending is that we go back to the original intent and we increase that to the Class 2 penalty of $250. It retains the mandatory court appearance that was previously adopted by City Council for nuisance party violations and a mandatory $500 penalty for second or subsequent offenses. And then finally, it changes the Section 5.01 of the City Code to specify that individuals, not just property owners, landlords, or occupants of a property, of real property, can be cited for maintaining or creating a public nuisance or attending a nuisance party once that determination has been made. So that's the ordinance presented for your review tonight, and staff's recommendation is that you adopt ordinance number 20-6, making these revisions to chapter 5.01 and 5.05 of the City Code.
I'm going to call on Gary Jenkins because I know, Gary, you've heard from a few people too in support of this. So I just want to give you some time here too.
Thank you, Mayor. I have been getting feedback from the community that they are very appreciative of our efforts to try to keep the community safe and to try to flatten the spread of COVID-19, particularly amongst the college students who a lot of the positives are found during contact tracing, and students are asymptomatic. So they're not even aware that they have COVID-19, and then they go out into the community and potentially can infect the rest of our population, including our vulnerable population of older adults and those with health issues. We have seen some success with what we've been doing so far. We've been enforcing this for about 3 weeks. The first week, we issued infractions at 8 parties. The second weekend, we issued infraction at 6 parties. And then this last weekend, we issued infractions at 4 parties. So it is having some impact. We know that the word has gotten out. Part of the issue that we're having now with just issuing infractions to hosts is that money is being collected or donated to the hosts of the parties to pay for their fines. So that particular infraction is becoming less effective and less of a deterrent. And so adding the ability to also issue infractions to those who are engaged in the activities that cause it to become a public nuisance will help us to continue on this path to try to gain full compliance with the proclamation.
Okay, questions. First of all, Nathan.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. And Chief Jenkins, thank you so much. And Laura for drafting this as well. I think Mayor Johnson has already mentioned how appreciative the governor has been, and I know our community has been for Chief taking a front role in this, and really, I want it to be known, because I know there's been a lot of negativity as well as positive comments regarding enforcement. But I know Chief and the department have gone out of their way, as well as the city has gone out of its way to advertise and inform and so on and so forth. So Chief has made a great effort for public outreach. I think also it should be noted that this is not targeting students. We have had parties that have been in residence as well. So that should be noted. So in any case, I think this is a great step. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Ann, did I see your hand earlier? Okay, then Eileen. Eileen is next, then we'll go to Pat.
Yeah, I just was a little curious about under definitions of enforcement officer, and I realize that we want to change that to make that language non-exclusionary. Dan will help me out with the terms here. but it just seems a little vague the way it is right at the moment. It means the mayor or any designee. I realize we want to get rid of the by him because that's, you know, non-inclusionary, but it just seems a little too vague. I don't want this to be challenged in a way that's going to cost a lot of everybody money in court. So is there some way to add a little something there, Laura?
So actually, that simply revised the language that said alternate designated by him. So code enforcement officers, every employee of the city directly answers to the mayor as the chief administrative officer of the city, and only has those duties that are delegated to the employee by the mayor. So enforcement officer, it's already written very broadly, more broadly than it is in some other sections of the code. Any city officer that's authorized to enforce the city code can proceed with that. So we have code enforcement officers, we have planning department employees who enforce the nuisance code. Previously, historically we had parks, a parks employee whose role it was to enforce the city code. I'm not concerned that that's too vague. That's actually the role of the mayor, is to designate employees to enforce city code.
Okay.
Okay. Pat, you're next.
Easy question. When should this be approved tonight? When does it go into effect?
5 days after publication in the newspaper.
Okay.
So
Thank
it's
you.
generally Tuesday. Ordinances adopted on Tuesday are generally published in the Saturday paper, correct, Dee?
She's nodding yes. Okay.
Yes. Yes. So then 5 days after that is when it goes into effect. So see, we simply track by an affidavit of publication what date, and then it'll be noted on the actual ordinance the effective date.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I was just check. Okay, Nathan.
Sorry, yeah, it just spurred one more question. I know in the COVID calls, there's been some discussion, or perhaps it was online, about looking at hotspots. So for instance, I know our downtown drinking establishments are doing a great job, but I have noticed as I've been walking my dog on the college area, some of the establishments have quite a few people inside beyond the recommended without masks. And so I have some questions about that. I would like to also bring up the fact that we do have a large retirement population, older individuals. And so citizens who are watching, or, this is also for the safety of our, elderly and those retired. So that was my question, Gary.
Well, with regard to businesses, we have been responding on those, and we have been issuing warnings. The way that it is set up by the governor is that complaints about businesses are supposed to be submitted through the state website, and then the regulatory agency that regulates that particular business is the entity that follows up on those complaints. So, however, we do step in and we do provide warnings and education on those, but the enforcement role on businesses is set up by the state to be handled by the state.
And to give you an example, I had an email this week from one of our residents who complained about some adults at a particular establishment that were more than 10, and they were not social distancing. And I made that referral to the police department, went from there. So with that, we go now to Dan Records.
Gary, I just wanted to, kind of float this idea and talk about and see if you have a response to this. In your comments about, the contact tracing, that's where we're seeing a lot of, the college age population that are testing positive from those contact tracing efforts, and they're being asymptomatic. Have you had any discussions with folks about kind of what the impact of this this change in the ordinance and starting enforcement activities of party goers and not just the hosts? Do you anticipate any challenges that creates in terms of or opportunities for increased clarity and transparency with contact tracing from ticketing and citing party goers as opposed to just the party hosts? Because I can see kind of both sides of that as potentially, if you're citing more party goers, that may be able to have a more of a information gathering that could be then used by contact tracers to do follow-ups with those people that were in attendance at those parties, but also the kind of when police officers arrive on a scene at a party, it's sometimes hard or difficult to capture everybody in kind of in large gatherings. So just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're correct. There are going to be some challenges in enforcing the party goer part of this because the host typically that we're at their residence or a property that they're responsible for. So even if everybody kind of takes off, they're kind of the ones that are left, and so that's not that much of a challenge. But there will be some challenges in enforcement of the party goers. But we will, if based on council's decision tonight, we definitely will do additional messaging, and we are, and as we've talked about tonight, and you pointed out about the potential threat or impact on the rest of the community. I think we're kind of shift our messaging a little bit from just consequences. We'll include that as well, but also talk about responsibility as community members. Because while students are here, they're part of our community. And so we will ask them to be responsible community members and respect the rest of the community as well, and the impact that they can have on the rest of the community.
Thank you. And I think, along with the kind of the conversation on that point, I think, the enforcement mechanism, I think what you said about the pooling of money for the party host, that is a problem for enforcement, and it kind of lessens the impact of that. So I think this is definitely something that is necessary that we need to do and move on. But I also think we should keep in mind that the contact tracing that comes from these types of events is very important for notifying those parties and getting them to testing sites so that we can keep combating the spread of COVID-19. And so in the enforcement, I think we need to keep that in mind too, is that information gathering for contact tracing efforts needs to be a priority as well.
Right. Well, we've been very careful about separating information between the health department and the police department. So we are not sharing information with them. They're not asking for it, and they're not asking us for information. And I think, although it would be helpful for them to perhaps get information about who is at these events, I think having that clear separation is important as well, so that the health department can conduct their business without being hampered by the involvement with law enforcement.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Pat, go back to you.
So this is a question for Chief Jenkins. In light of what we just talked about, will we be doing some collaboration with WSU in terms of communication here so that it's clear that we are partners in this?
Absolutely. And this is in line with what the mayor talked about earlier about the joint statement that's coming out between the two cities and the two universities. We're also very plugged in with WSU on messaging our enforcement and what our plans are. They're very supportive, and so and also the student groups, including the Greek student groups, Interfraternity Council, Fraternity and Sorority Life, Dean of Students Office, President's Office. They're all very supportive. They're all helping us get the message out as Councilmember Weller pointed out, we've gotten a lot of messaging out, and with a lot of it with WSU's help. So we're we're in touch with them regularly, and they're helping us get that word out.
And Pat, some of your concern I've shared directly with the president of the university. We've had some very good one-on-one conversations about follow-up too. Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion on this ordinance? This is item number 3.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Laura, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 20-6, an ordinance of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, relating to Title V, Health and Sanitation, amending ordinance number 07-3, sections 4, 8, 17, and 20, 2007, and Pullman City Code chapters 5.01 and 5.05, and other matters properly related thereto.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Matter carries. We now move to item number 4, which is an ordinance denying the proposal to amend the zone classification. But before we do, here comes the ever popular appearance of fairness questions that Mike Urban said we're going to do tonight. So here it comes. And I'll just call each one of you. I'll read the question and I'll put it off my screen. So here it goes. Does any member of this council have any knowledge of having conducted business with either the proponent or the opponents of this proceeding? Brandon?
No.
Ann?
No.
And Nathan?
No.
Dan Records?
No.
Pat Wright?
No.
Eileen?
No.
And no for me. Has any member of this council communicated with any proponent or opponent regarding the proposal that is the subject of this proceeding? Brandon?
No.
Ann?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Dan?
No.
Pat?
No.
Eileen?
No.
No for Glenn. Does any member of this council have either a financial or personal interest in the outcome of this proceeding? Brandon?
No.
Ann?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Dan?
No.
Pat?
No.
Eileen?
No.
No for Glenn. Does any member of this council know whether or not their employer has a financial interest in this matter or has an interest in the outcome of this proceeding? Brandon?
No.
Ann?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Dan?
No.
Pat?
No.
Eileen?
No.
No for Glenn. Does any member of this council live or own property within 300 feet of the area of which is subject to the proceeding? Brandon?
No.
Ann?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Dan?
No.
Pat?
No.
Eileen?
No.
No for Glenn. Does any member of this council have any special knowledge about the substance or merits of the proceeding which would or could cause council member to prejudge the outcome of this proceeding? Brandon?
No.
Ann?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Dan?
No.
Pat?
No.
Eileen?
No.
And no for Glenn. Is there any member of this council who believes that he or she cannot sit and hear this matter fairly and impartially, both as to the respective positions of the proponents or the opponents of this proceeding? Brandon?
No.
Ann?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Dan?
No.
Pat?
No.
Eileen?
No.
And no for Glenn. Next thing is we have not heard from anyone in the audience, but is there any member of the audience who, because of the appearance of fairness doctrine, wishes to disqualify any member of this council from hearing this matter? And if so, please state the name of the council member. We have not heard anything in advance on this, so we will go from there. And with that, RJ Lott, our new planning director, welcome. And here's the council.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. It's my pleasure to be with you folks tonight. The next item on your agenda this evening, a proposed zone change, file number Z-20-1. This is a proposal for a zone change from zone R3 to R4 on an approximately 2.8 acre parcel located north of Northwest Stadium Way between Northwest Ritchie and Northwest Nye Street and south of Timothy Street on Military Hill. There is a vicinity map in your council packet as attachment A. The applicant on this proposal was the Gilbrain Development Company. Like I said, the property is 2.8 acres in size, and their request was, like I said, to reclassify the zone for this property from R3 medium density multifamily residential to R4 high density multifamily residential. The primary difference between the two zones is the density. R3 has a maximum of 29 units per acre. R4, the higher density zone, has a maximum of 44 units per acre. There are adjacent zoning districts in the vicinity of this parcel, both R3 and R4. The current land use of the property is a church building with an empty lot. City utilities exist in the area and can be extended to the parcel. Topography of the area is an issue. There is approximately a 50-foot difference between the east side and the west side of the parcel. Access could be found on adjacent public right-of-ways. There was a mitigation of non-significance issued on April 23rd of 2020. That's attachment F in your packet. The Planning Commission heard this item in their August hearing, or in their August meeting. Prior to their meeting, they did receive approximately 50 to 55 emails. All but just a few were against this proposal. Generally, in summary of those emails, the common themes or the common concerns of those individuals were traffic, of the difference in density, the noise that may exist, parking, the steep topography, and the intersection design with the streets there. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did come to a unanimous conclusion of a recommendation of denial to the City Council for this evening. Their findings of fact are also included in your packet for this evening. Going back just one step briefly, there is a staff analysis and recommendation. The staff did recommend approval of the zone change. There was a transportation study included, a transportation threshold determination was included in the packet as well. So if the council this evening does come to a conclusion of denial, there is an ordinance already in place and ready to go in your packet for tonight. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, questions of RJ? Okay, Brandon, you.
Yeah. RJ, welcome to the city of Pullman. So I guess I have a question. We have one of the documents that we received was an ordinance. I guess by ordinance we have to agree with the recommendation of the Planning Commission, or I'm confused on that just a little bit. I don't recall having done an ordinance declining a zone change before, so I just maybe I missed that before. And is staff recommendation still that that we move forward on this zone change? And so I guess that's why I'm seeing competing things. If the staff recommendation is to continue moving forward on this, why we have a drafted ordinance to decline.
Right. So yeah, let me clarify that. That's a good question. That's a good question. So I being new here, I've been here about 3 weeks. So I did go back and look at some past zone changes, especially ones that were ultimately denied. Traditionally, the city has done an ordinance, even if the request is denied. So in keeping with that, traditionally, we've done that again for tonight. The second part of your question, you're asking about the initial staff recommendation of approval. So what I did was I included that in your packet for this evening so that it would capture the entire process. I know that's probably slightly confusing where there's a staff recommendation of approval and then it's a recommendation of denial by the Planning Commission. But I really wanted to capture the process so that the council tonight could have the the whole picture in front of you for consideration tonight.
I appreciate that. I did read through the emails, and there were a lot of them. Yeah, one of the questions that I had was, and I hate to make it seem like I'm off topic here, but more globally, if residents, whether we move forward or not, if residents voice a great amount of concern about an aspect or two, does that prompt staff at that point, again, regardless of whether a project moves forward or not, to say, obviously there's concern with the intersection, maybe that's something we need to look at, the engineering of that?
I don't want to speak specifically to the engineering. That's a little
That sounds
bit
more like a Kevin one. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, a little bit outside my box there, but so the initial staff analysis, and if you go back and look through the staff report in here, it does identify some of the reasons that staff initially recommended approval, such as it meets the comprehensive plan intention. There's compatible uses, compatible zoning districts in the vicinity. So there are some reasons in the analysis why staff initially had the proposal or the recommendation of approval.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I see Kevin's back on. So I guess another way to put it is, now we know that 50 some odd residents have a major problem or fear or concern about this intersection. So regardless of this one thing, whether we vote yes or no, is that the kind of thing that we would say, hey, let's take a look at this no matter what?
Yeah, I'd have to be honest, I'd have to defer that to Kevin. I think he would be in a better position to answer that. Yeah.
So Brandon, could you repeat the question, just so I'm sure?
My question, Kevin, was regarding an issue that's brought to light, or it's made obvious throughout this process. So independent of the decision that we make, if residents, for example, talk about traffic concerns, specifically the engineering of that intersection, topography, things like that, if that would prompt us to then take an extra look at something within our city, such as that intersection, and maybe try to find ways to mitigate those concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we're pretty, what's the word? We try to facilitate development. So if somebody comes in and wants to invest in the community, we try to help them as best we can sort through the issues and problems that they're going to face with their project. And if we can find solutions based on what we know or things we can figure out with them, we do that. So, we certainly want to see development and investment. If we can mitigate the issues, we do that. And we asked for, the main issue that was brought up, it has to do with traffic, I think, though noise and other things have been mentioned. And that's one of the reasons we required the traffic study, was to take a look from an engineering perspective of what impacts that project could potentially have. And so concerns would be, how does it affect the traffic light at Stadium Way and Grand Avenue? And the study looked at that, and for the most part, it would add some additional traffic volume to that intersection, but it wouldn't degrade it to a level that would be of concern to Public Works. So, I mean, and that's true of any development in town. It's going to impact traffic lights if there's more traffic coming to that intersection. But we operate under levels of service, and I know it seems a little odd, but we're, if you think about it from a grading system that you'd have in school, A, B, C, D. D is the lowest level typically for an intersection to function, a signalized intersection. So this project would not push the Stadium Way Grand Avenue intersection into a deficiency that would cause Public Works concern. The other issue that came up that the residents brought up was, how are people going to access the property? Are they going to come off of Ritchie? Are they going to come off of Stadium Way? And what the applicants proposed in the traffic study, or showed in the traffic study, was the main driveway to this project would be about halfway between Hall Drive and Ritchie. So it's roughly 400 feet in each direction from where that driveway would be sited. And so our comment to Jennifer, who was the interim planning director at the time, was that, let's see if I can find it. We said if the project driveway stays where it's shown in the traffic study, we feel that the project can be successful from a traffic standpoint. But if they move that driveway somewhere else, then it's going to require potentially some additional evaluation and mitigation measures that the city would require. And so the zone change and the SEPA are kind of the first things that have to happen on a project. But assuming the council were to approve this tonight, they still have to go through site plan review, which looks at all these issues again, but in a deeper context from an engineering standpoint and a planning standpoint. And we would flesh out some of the details at that point as well. So I know it's a long-winded answer. Hopefully I gave you what you wanted, but if not, ask again, I guess.
Sure. No, and I don't mind contacting you at a later time too. I was curious about the moments where we say, hey, well, now we know, right? Now we know what this huge group of residents thinks, that maybe we're getting insight that we didn't have before.
Sure.
And we're also saying just by increasing all the population in that area, you would increase traffic issues. And the Planning Commission saw that as well. Eileen.
Yeah, this has come up, the traffic situation and how cars per hour and all like such has been determined. And didn't we have this discussion about this once before, that that people felt that the criteria, the standards against which we were measuring these things or evaluating these things was outdated for the way we want to live. That to turn every street into to meet the warrants that currently exist, we wanted to look at those and say, well, wait a minute, maybe we want to slow things down. Maybe we want more walkable, more bikeable. And so I seem to recall a conversation about that it was kind of an outmoded, almost a 1950s approach, maximum cars, maximum speed. And we wanted to turn away from that. Am I the only ones who are calling that conversation?
I think we're talking about federal warrants, aren't we, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably two issues there, Eileen. One is kind of slowing things down, what we want our streets to look like, the multimodal aspect. But, oftentimes what a traffic study looks at is impacts on intersections. And it looks at traffic volumes, and we often can ask them also to look at bikes and pedestrians. But in this case, it's a signalized intersection at Grand and Stadium Way, so bikes and peds are accommodated. When we look at level of service, I'm not aware, and that's the methodology that's used to determine whether an intersection is degraded to a point that's unacceptable. That's been around for a while, as you say, and I haven't heard of any new approaches to looking at level of service as it pertains to intersections. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is accurate about the multimodal, slowing things down, accommodating all modes of transportation. But I think it's a little bit separate from the level of service issue with a traffic signal.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Then seeing none, if you...
I got a question.
Okay, Dan.
Sorry. Kevin, I'm just curious, because I think I saw in some of the responses, some of the concerns that were raised, not so much concern over the Grand Avenue Stadium Way signal intersection, but the kind of complex intersection at Nye, Hall, and Stadium, where they have that zigzag intersection at those steep slopes. And I recall a couple of years ago with some icy conditions on Hall and having some pileups there at that stop sign where it intersects with Stadium Way right below the property in question. did the traffic study address those issues at all?
I don't remember, Dan, to tell you the truth. Clayton's the one that our Deputy Public Works Director did the review and the comment on this. And I've reviewed it, but it's been long enough that I don't remember all the details.
Yeah, because I think, you know, when I was thinking about the kind of proximity to intersections, I do think that there are some issues at certain time periods during the day with the Grand Avenue signal intersection. But that's typically, you know, centered around start of the workday, end of the workday, kind of higher traffic volumes right there. But in terms of the residential neighborhoods that surround the property, I think there are some things there that I don't know if just looking at the traffic volumes in that type of traffic study is going to really comment on the complexity of that intersection and the nature of the consequences of adding additional traffic flow right there or nearby there of entering traffic close to that intersection in particular.
Sure.
I know there's 400 feet, like you said, and that, you know, the traffic study did look at kind of the sight lines from that potential driveway. But I think that's not necessarily capturing the full context of the complexity of the region.
Yeah, I understand your point. I just pulled the figure out from the traffic study, and tonight it looks like from where the driveway is proposed, it would be about 420 feet. So a little bit, maybe another 50, 100 feet to get to Hull Drive. Not much, but it does not appear that I can tell that they look specifically at that intersection of Stadium Way, Nye, and Hall, as you brought up.
Okay. Eileen, I saw your hand, and then we'll go to Ann.
Yeah, Chief Heston, your people fought a fire in that area not too long ago, and I seem to recall at least just some scuttlebutt that it was a real bugger to fight that fire. And I know this was probably at the site plan level and not at this level, but I do have some concerns for both the people that would live there and for our fire service as to if we get an apartment fire in that location, especially if the developer wants to push the capacity even higher with a variance.
Yeah, it's definitely a tight area. So I'm working with my fire marshal to just take a look at the final plans on that to make sure that, you know, they're meeting the requirements of what we need as minimums to get in there and do that.
I remember climbing there, as topography was an issue, and getting hose line. You're right, Eileen. It was a challenge.
Yeah, that was to a undeveloped driveway to that one in the wintertime. So gravel road, but these others would be that. But no, we're definitely taking a look at that, Eileen.
Can I ask a basic question then? Because from what I saw, it said police and fire had no concerns. And I would hate to be down a thing where we've approved something and then the best we can do is mitigate the concerns that exist. I mean, that's what I saw on the form that we received from staff was that we had no concerns on that.
Yeah, from my fire marshal, we had no concerns as far as access. It's similar to other things in town as well.
Okay, any other further comments or questions? Oh, Ann Parks, please.
Thank you. I have driven in that area over the years, taking children to school mostly, and I'm just not comfortable with the amount of increase of population in that area on that specific site. I know traffic studies and engineering, it's kind of like it looks good on paper, but if you're driving up that hill on a snowy December morning or coming down it and trying to stop, whether it's hall access or true / Stadium Way access, it's dangerous. And I just want to go on record as saying I think it's too much for the area, and I don't agree. I just think it would not be safe in the long run. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Nathan, and then we'll go to Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and as somebody who went to PHS, Pullman High School right up there, and then driving that when I was 16. You take a couple 16-year-olds in a car, it's not always paying a lot of attention, just got the license. So definitely a challenging area. So, yeah.
Okay, Pat Wright, please.
And I would concur with what Ann just indicated. I know we've got the objective clinical information, but I don't think we can discount the anecdotal information. And even on a best day, that interchange there is a nightmare between Nye and Stadium / True and the Hall Drive issue. And that's with reasonable traffic. I can't imagine what it would look like with increased traffic. So those would be my 2 cents.
Any other comments? Back to Brandon.
Yeah, and Council Member Wright, I'm not even sure if we have all the clinical portion of it. If we didn't get a really good study on that intersection, then I think we're missing something pretty severe. And I don't know if this is a trend, but I know we got the same thing with Crestview where they did, 2 sides, but one of the big concerns was the egress at the middle school and what kind of traffic impact there would be. And that wasn't part of it. And so I think this is a huge omission. And that is of much greater concern, I think, it seems like, to all of us and to some of these residents than Stadium Way was.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Laura.
Can I just remind the council, so because of the state single hearing rule, I want to make sure that you understand what evidence you can consider in making your decision tonight, and that you can only consider the record that's before you. And while you can certainly use your personal experience to analyze that record, just understand that your own what some have called the anecdotal facts are not part of the record, and you can't consider that anecdotal as part of the facts in making your decision. And then just to follow up on what Councilmember Chapman said, if the council does believe that additional input is needed in order for you to make a decision, then the only action that you can take tonight is to remand the case back to the Planning Commission to obtain that additional information and keep it part of the single hearing.
And remind you, the Planning Commission did take all the testimony, and some of the testimony you reflected here tonight, and they came to a unanimous decision to deny. Is there any other comments or questions here? If not, do I hear a motion on this ordinance? And again, when we take a vote, if you say yes, you are denying the proposal. So just want to make sure that's very clear. Do I hear a motion on the ordinance?
I move
Sorry.
to adopt the ordinance.
You have the floor. Dan, you said you adopt as a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Nathan. Laura, would you please read the ordinance?
Ordinance number 20-7, an ordinance denying the proposal to amend the zone classification from R3 to R4 for the real estate herein described, consisting of 2.8 acres located north of Northwest Stadium Way, between Northwest Ritchie Street and Northwest Nye Street, and south of Timothy Street.
And again, by voting yes, you are denying the proposal. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, matter carries. We now go to item number 5, which is a motion to approve the CARES Act expenditure. We go back to Mike Urban. And again, we're probably talking about 2 different issues tonight. One is the proposed CARES Act, and then there's some additional CARES funding that'll be coming up later. So with that, Mike Urban, and then we'll hear from a member of the public who asked for some time tonight. Okay, so Mike, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again, Council. So the last time I was before you to discuss the CARES Act, we were alluding to some more money and information would be forthcoming. And since that, obviously, we've had some significant changes. And what I consider significant is we did get an allocation of more money to the tune of $518,400. And the other change that came along with this is the original $1,036,800 plus the new $518,400. They extended the spend date to the end of November. So they've given an extra 30 days on that. And if the council would like to utilize this extra $518,400, I'd like to bring a contract amendment back at the next meeting for the consent agenda, just extending the contract with Commerce, allowing us to accept those extra dollars. And if council does want to go forward with those extra dollars, you can see in my memo that I included some items that we're working on, getting some answers for. And the goal is to come back to you and say, here is everything we could think of. It may total 700,000. It might total 518 exactly. But to basically give council an a la carte menu to choose from, I'll certainly weigh in on a few things that I think are very strong candidates and force my opinion upon you, I guess, for lack of a better term. Really, the biggest thing on that is the fact that since we got the extra 30 days, I'm really going to advocate for capturing the November payroll, just like we did for all the other months beforehand. So that's just an easy way to recoup these dollars and prop up our general fund budgets. But anyway, based on the extra dollars that we received and the conversation last time over the marketing amount and the dollar amount, I kind of thought this might be a good time to draw a line, if you would, that I've had a memo sitting on the sidelines. We've spent out, council's given me permission to go spend out the first 2/3 of it. And since we've got another bite at the apple here, and I haven't heard too many concerns about the last two items on the first $1 million, I'd like to see if council would entertain a motion allowing us to move forward on these extra projects while we consider the extra $500,000 and what to do with it. And if council is interested in that motion tonight, I would certainly bring those items back along with the others at the end of the year with the budget amendments for the housekeeping. So that's really the crux of why this is here and what the update was today. I know there was some comments from some of the citizens of the community that you wanted to take into consideration, but I wanted to make sure you had this extra information, get some additional guidance as to what the will of the group is, and so we can keep moving forward. Because although they gave us an extra 30 days, we are in the middle of September here, so the window does continue to close. One of the items that is worth mentioning that the guidance clarified a little bit, and this came up at one of the meetings where we talked about bulk ordering for PPE. The new guidance does add some clarity to that, and we can do some of that bulk purchasing. The parameters are not, we can't order 2 or 3 years worth, but it looks like there's a soft spot in there I can hit. So I'll be bringing that as one of the things to consider as well. So that's just one thing I wanted to add to the second bullet for increasing PPE supplies, is there's some additional guidance on bulk purchasing. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we are asking if you would consider a motion tonight on the last items for the first 1,036,000 while we continue to work on items if council is interested in accepting the additional 518,000, where we can bring that to you on the 29th for discussion.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
Okay, so we'll go to Pat Wright.
I'm really confused. So what two items are we talking about? The increase in the allotment and the extension? I'm not sure I totally understand what we're talking about here.
As far as approving the two items tonight goes, Councilman, right?
Yeah. What two items are we talking about?
The additional sterilizer for those for September, and the purchase of the remote sending units for the AMI project for remote reading of utilities. This is part of my original memo back on July 30th.
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed the items. I never had a motion at the last meeting.
So that, those two would then total the 1,036,800.
Yeah, not to exceed.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry to ask that question, but if I didn't understand it, our general viewership and listenership will not have understood it because there are so many gray areas around this whole thing that it's very confusing for people. Thank you.
Okay. So we're talking about the original.
Got it.
Not the additional 500.
Yeah,
And Parks,
got it.
you're
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I really appreciate that both of these items are direct service, if you will, or for our residents. And they are for the safety and of our fire personnel, but also to that the utility reading project will make it much more efficient, and it will bring some of our employees back to work. And that's what I think that these CARES dollars should be used toward, is direct service in our city. So thank you.
Eileen, you're next.
Well, however we choose to divide up this pie, bullet point number 3, or the RFP that we saw a copy of earlier today. I have some real concerns about that. I don't feel that this RFP reflects what the council had directed. And some of it's way off. And if we're going to be spending public money, whether we spend it now or in October, in November, or whenever, we need to have some clarity on this. I have twice reviewed our council meeting on the video. I don't know where the number 50,000 came from. I don't know where the notion was that we were going to collaborate virtually for virtual WSU events. We were talking about downtown Pullman. Al Sorensen at 1.14 in the tape, he makes it crystal clear that we were talking about not necessarily downtown Pullman, but Pullman businesses. And Glenn, at 1.16, you concurred, and again concurred at 1.43. We talked about the bid process, whether we were going to go up and above over the bid line, so we would have to bid this out. Like I say, I don't care when we slice up this pie, but this RFP does not reflect what we asked for. Like I say, this is just, I don't know where this came to me at 11:13 this morning, but boy, I've gone through this with a fine tooth comb, and the more I read it, the angrier I got. I felt that we were dismissed to the point of being insulted by this. We want to do a good job. I'm sort of speaking for Al here as well. We want to do a good job on this, and I don't care where we get the money from. We can get it from 120, or we can stand on the street corner with our hat in our hand. This is not what we asked for. We can change the document, not a problem. But how do we change our methodology? How do we?
Still in draft form, and that's why they were sending it out, just to get additional opinions.
No,
it has not gone out.
It's already out.
Well, to the council.
No, that's not what I heard. Can I get a clarification on that?
Yes,
on our website.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is out for bid. We were at the time this happened, we were still under the guise that we had to have this dollars expended by the end of October. So we fast tracked an RFP to get that out so we could get the work done, because it was a shorter timeline. Now that we know we have the extra 30 days, we certainly have some other options.
And again, tonight, we're not talking about the marketing plan for this motion. This motion deals not with a marketing plan.
I'm not talking about the marketing plan. I am talking about the fact that this RFP does not reflect the will of the council, which was sparkling clear.
Other comments from council? Dan, I almost saw your hand.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get too much into this issue because I don't think that's the issue at hand right now in this moment. But I don't know exactly where Eileen's coming from with kind of how strong you feel about that. I think there are some things that we can talk about with the RFP, and clarifying some points on there and talking about that process. But I don't feel that that's a stark departure from what we talked about at the last council meeting. I know you feel that way, but I don't see what specifically we're talking about in that RFP, because an RFP is a general proposal, and it's not really talking about the specifics. I think the projected outcomes and stuff that we want to see out of a project like that are the deliverables, and what we talked about, what Al talked about in terms of being Pullman centered and having that kind of focus is more about what comes out of the deliverables. But I don't see what you're talking about in how the RFP doesn't communicate what was talked about at the last council meeting.
Okay. Any other comments from council? And again, that's the different, okay, Nathan?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're dealing with a couple. We've gone on a couple different things here, and I know we're just dealing with exactly as Mike said. And I think also the public is a little confused on exactly because okay, on the thing with Eileen, and I know we're not doing this. I understand what she's talking about regarding more Pullman focus, less on WSU. But that I know we're not dealing with right now. But I completely understand where she's coming from and where Al was coming from. So we received a message from, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, Haley from Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories about using the 518,000. Is this the current 518,000, or is this some projected into the future that she was talking about?
This 518 lives outside of the document, my original memo, because it was just additionally granted to us over the last week. So what I'm talking about is the original memo. When we knew we were getting some extra money and the RFP discussion started, and I was trying to balance the two items, I came to the conclusion that if we can stay with the original memo, since we do have another bite at the apple with some more dollars, the marketing discussion, it makes sense because Council Member McCall and I did have some discussions about this earlier, that if we roll that forward into the 518, we can get the direction, and if the council wants to pull the RFP, if the council wants to change it, if the council wants to deal with some of the items at the time of contract, there's a couple options for the marketing part. But based on the original memo, there were two items that were existing out there that I hadn't heard any concerns about. So I really just wanted to get those things coming and get those processes moving along.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Mike, because just like Pat, Council Member Wright, trying to tease this out to, because I know we got into a very energetic conversation last time. And so now trying to, deal these things out. I will say, and I think it does bear mentioning what Haley said. I think it's a very forward thinking by her and Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories. But I would say also that I issue out this challenge to the county and to Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories to match whatever they raise. So I'm putting that out there. I know this is not the direct conversation right now, but I think that at least needs to be said. We at least need to address the email that.
Since you have mentioned Haley several times, she is on the public call-in right now.
Perfect.
And this may be the time to bring it up. Then we're going to separate things. Okay.
Can I get a clarification real quick from Councilmember Weller before we get Haley?
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure that you were challenging the county and Schweitzer to match us on Haley's recommendation of ordering testing.
And
sorry, I just muted. So yes,
okay,
yes, and I think that's a great.
And
great ideas.
Dan, I saw that you had an urgent sign there too, if you wanted to say something.
I was just, should we take care of the issues on the floor with the two issues before we go into other topics?
I would really like to, because I'm trying to separate the two.
Yeah.
And that's, so you see what he has for the memo that has those specific items that he's brought to you before, and he just added those extra two to take care of the money. So that's what I would like to do before we talk about what this 500,000 is all about.
Okay.
If that's okay with the council. And with that, do I hear a motion again dealing with Mike's memo? Do I hear a motion approving that?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Okay. All those in favor of that memo, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Now, we'll go to the second part of the thing. And so here's Haley on behalf of SEL, Haley Lewis with Government Relations. So Haley, you've got the floor for about 5 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Ruby, yeah, my ears are burning. Hi. So my name's Haley Lewis. I am the Government Affairs Specialist at SEL. Oh, I'm hearing an echo. Is that me or just you guys?
Go ahead and mute one of your connections there.
All right.
Okay. How about now? Can we hear
Can
you?
you-
There we go.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, my ears are burning through that whole conversation. So yeah, I support our Quad Cities Municipal Government Relations. And so I just want to say thank you. And Mayor Johnson asked that I keep it to less than 3 minutes, and I'll do that. But I do want to take 10 seconds to just give lay on some more accolades for Adam and his time at the city. And Adam Lincoln, it's been great working with you, and we wish you nothing but the best on your new adventure. So yeah, back to the task at hand. I didn't mean to further complicate something that is already kind of confusing. And so I understand that the motion that just passed was directed towards the previously allocated funds, and I didn't mean to throw a wrench in it, but what sparked our interest was we as SEL are concerned specifically about the proposal to spend $30,000 of CARES funds on a marketing plan to encourage tourism in Pullman. And looking a little further down the road and around the corner, we have concerns for how the additional $518,000 that has been allocated to the city will be spent. And so, as outlined in the letter that I had emailed to the council and city staff on Saturday, we are concerned that the use of federal relief dollars to market a COVID-19 hotspot is not necessarily the right use of those funds, and is likely a stretch to justify the Washington State Department of Commerce through who will hold the contract and who will entertain the reimbursement request for said funds. And I believe that the focus and funds should be on widespread and affordable testing. There are several states across the country that have allocated state relief dollars to set up free coronavirus testing stations. And we believe that the most important step in the road to recovery is beating this virus, not necessarily promoting tourism. Using CARES dollars to fund testing is clearly defined as an appropriate and qualified use of funds. And by providing testing for free to members of our community who might otherwise not seek testing due to what may be a prohibitive cost, we can better isolate and care for the infected members of our community. And at the current estimates of out-of-pocket costs of $100 per test, for example, we could offer 300 tests to community members using that same $30,000 that may or may not be set aside for from the first wave for marketing funds. And with the additional $518,000 becoming available, we could offer 5,000 more free tests. And I just want to pose to the council, what better way to market Pullman than to get back to being a safe community, and by showing that we are bonded together as a community to beat COVID. And I just want to thank council for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Haley. And you stay within your time too. So thank you very much. And again, this is a suggestion for that next portion. And again, that's going to come up on the 29th at the next meeting. In the meantime, there'll probably be some emails with some suggestions, and we can go from there. Is there any other kind of comment about that anybody would like to make? Okay. With that, I'll go to IT. As far as I know, there's no new business to be brought up. Unless you've heard about it.
No other callers.
Mike, you haven't heard of any, and I have not heard of any. So with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, we're adjourned at 9:24.